Hello, this is James Helm of Helm Enterprises Forging Division, looking wild and woolly in San Antonio, Texas. I am in the backyard of my buddy Tobin Nieto of Stonehaven Knife Works, and just wanted to take a look at this rig that I finished building for an Army Ranger sniper that's stationed over in Afghanistan. The core of the rig, of course, is the knife itself. The Ranger saw on my website a knife that I had posted a few months ago. It was one of my aggression knives, which they're about a foot long blade, double-edged, with usually extremely bright paracord wrap. In this case, it was retina-searing neon orange. Well, we decided that was not a good idea to have on your side when you're a sniper in Afghanistan, so we went with a little more subdued coyote brown and black paracord for the wrap. I made a few other small changes, mostly up close to where the blade meets the handle. I narrowed it down a little bit. The other aggression had a recurve to the blade, a very slight recurve. I eliminated that, made it a completely straight edge, makes it easier to sharpen. But all in all, it's pretty close in design, just made a little more practical. Okay.
Yeah, it's going.
Okay, got that out of the way.
We're still rolling.
The knife is, in some ways, pretty standard for me. It's 5160 steel. Really good stuff. It's double-edged, so it's fully sharpened on the top edge up to about this point, so about a third of the blade length. The blade is approximately 12 inches. Its handle is an offset coffin shape with an exposed butt for hammering. A little less on the, practical side as far as being able to hammer tent stakes and stuff, but very practical when you think about hammering somebody in the temple if you need to in the middle of a close quarters combat. There are a couple of new things on this for me. The wrap looks like what I've done before, but it's a little different underneath. There is actually a slab of leather on both sides under the tang, on the tang under the wrap. It's glued to the tang to hold it in place while I was working, and then I beveled the edge pretty heavily so that I wouldn't end up with a real square corner. It's a nice rounded corner here. Then it is wrapped with a stripped core black paracord with a stripped core coyote brown paracord on top. 3-strand Turk's head knot, which acts somewhat as a guard to help your hand not slide up onto the blade. Core is intact on that. And then the whole thing has been impregnated with marine epoxy to make it hard. It is impervious to water. Basically made a composite material in place on the tang. In the past, I have done paracord underlay that was had the core intact with an overlay with the core stripped. I'd also done it with just leather and then the stripped paracord on top. This is the first time that I've combined it all, where I have leather underneath with the edges beveled to thicken the handle up a little bit, and then the cord on top, the stripped cord on top to give it a little more thickness and a contrast in color underneath, and then the stripped overlay on top. So not too much different, but just a little bit different. It's very comfortable. This is probably one of the nicer feeling wrapped handles that I've done. The other new thing on this is the black oxide finish on the steel. This is a Caswell black oxide, cold finish, and the whole blade, after being cleaned, after I had wrapped the handle and sealed it, the whole thing was dipped down into the solution for 5 minutes or so, pulled out, and then cleaned, dried, and sealed. The wrap was completely submerged, pulled it out. It hadn't soaked in at all. That epoxy made it solid, impervious to water. The Ranger sniper that ordered this is a self-described knife nut. He told me he carries a pair of clippers and a folding saw in order to help clear out his hides if he needs to, his sniper hides. But as he put it, let's face it, they're not any use in close quarters combat and they're not very cool. So he wanted something that he could fight with and something that he could also use practically for clearing out sniper hides, and this will serve both functions very nicely. It's built as a chopper. It's a little bit blade heavy. It drops down a little bit below the level of your knuckles to give you a more powerful chop.
Science!
It's got a very pointy little point and fully sharpened top edge, so on the fighting side it's definitely well taken care of.
Go.
And now comes the most fun part of every video, getting to laugh at how white my legs are. I'm not going to do a whole lot of demonstration with this knife. I don't want to get gunk on it before I send it off to him. Just basic hair shaving test. So you can see it's shaven cleanly. You can see all the hair on there. So that's enough for the pale rider. This is one of the more complicated sheath rigs that I've done. The Ranger wanted to be able to wear it on his backpack or on his belt. Wanted a retention strap, which I've never done one before, for a knife. I do them on my tomahawk sheaths. And he and I both like the idea of using the sheath as a platform for a survival kit instead of like the Rambo knives with the hollow handles. You're able to carry more on the sheath in a pouch than you can in a handle. You're able to access it more easily. You're not compromising your knife's design in order to accommodate storing your survival kit on the knife itself. And you're more likely to lose your knife and still have it on your belt or backpack, have the sheath on your belt or backpack, than you are to lose the sheath and still have the knife. So here's a picture of what the sheath looked like before I added all the hardware to it. And here's what it is now. The idea with the slots was to add straps for holding little molly pouches. There's extra length back here so you can let out some of that slack and slip it through the attachment on a molly pouch. I'm actually going to send some extra webbing with him with the knife so that the Ranger can play around with it and see how exactly he wants to set it up for his own needs. I've got some paracord storage. This is actually the same color, same cord actually, same spool of cord that the wrap was. You can see how when I impregnated the wrap with epoxy it darkened the color a little bit. I'm going to send some extra of that with him as well. I really like I really like Kydex because it's very flexible in how you can set it up. It's easy to make it ambidextrous. You can swap your carry hardware from one side to the other very quickly. The grommets that you attach the sheath pieces together with allow for very good attachment points. Good place to anchor your paracord. I've got it sitting loose, just threaded through these holes and then stuck behind itself. If that slips out, it's still not going to undo, but it's quick to access a little piece of it, cut off some paracord if you need it out in the field. And then it's anchored very solidly with a knot through a grommet up here at the base end of it. Because he wanted to be able to wear it on a molly backpack or on his belt, I added 4 Molly locks. These have little catches that are spring loaded. Pop it open. You want to change how these are set up. It's just little Chicago bolts, little Phillips screwdriver. So you can take them off, move them around, add different hardware, put them in different places. Depending on how he sets stuff up, the bottom molly locks may or may not be useful for attaching to the backpack. If he decides he doesn't need them, he can take them off in 2 minutes, have them out of the way. They also are helping anchor the ends of the extra webbing so that they're not flopping around. I'm also going to send a little bit of extra buckles and sliders with him so that he can adjust depending on what his need is. Set it up for his own personal way of carrying stuff. The retention strap was kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, I'd never done one on a sheath before. I ended up making kind of a little prosthetic piece that screws onto the sheath. It's 2 layers of Kydex that have been grommeted together, riveted together with a slot for the strap to fit through. Slips around, snaps together. You can adjust how tight it is. If you want to swap from being carried on one side versus the other, you can just undo the screws, flip it over, screw it back together along with the rest of the carry hardware. Normally, to swap from being carried on the backpack to being carried on the belt, you'd have to open your molly locks, undo the screws, take them off, put a tech lock or what have you in its place, screw them on, and be ready to go. So I came up with a couple different belt carry options. The first one is this one made out of webbing, and you just open your molly locks up and you slip that loop over both of them. And it's adjustable, so you can make it a tighter fit or a looser fit. Slip it over them, pull it up, and snap them closed. And they can actually fit down here out of the way, or ready to put them on your belt, just pull the loops up, and there you go. And with the sliders, you can adjust the height if that's not far enough of a drop down, which I can't really see wearing it lower than that, but if it's not, then he can cut a couple longer loops webbing and just do the same thing, just make longer loops. So real quick to adjust the height up and down to set it where you want it to be. This is a little more flexible if that's what he wants. He doesn't want it stiff at its side, he wants it to be able to move around some, then the webbing option is there. If he wants it a little stiffer, I built one out of Kydex with a tech lock on it. This is 2 layers of Kydex for stiffness and strength. You open the tech lock up, you undo your screws, and you can adjust it up and down in height. Get it set where you want it to be, close the tech lock back, and then you're ready to wear this on your belt. You just pop your molly locks open, slip that in place, and close your molly locks over the Kydex. And then it's ready to hang on your belt, and it'll be stiffer. It won't move around as much. So depending on whether the flexibility works better or the stiffness works better, he has 2 different options that he can do. Both of them are height adjustable pretty quickly and easily. And then I deliberately left these last 2 holes open if he wants to add a piece of paracord as a leg strap. Those are open where he can do that. With a blade this big, I kind of doubt he's ever going to do scout carry. But with the straps, or just using the tech lock, I'd probably use 2 tech locks in that case. It would be pretty easy to rig it up. It's short enough it could work, but I do kind of doubt it that he ever carries it this way. If he wants to, though, he has the option. He has a lot of carry options. So, pretty happy with how this came out. Like I said, it's the most complex sheath rig that I've ever done. I'm looking forward to seeing how he ends up setting it up when he gets a hold of it. And I hope it serves him well. Appreciate it. I'll show you some neat stuff again later on. Thanks.